welcome to the deep dive. We've got a really interesting set of articles here, all about Prince Rahim al-Hussaini, the newly appointed Aga Khan. Yeah, it's a story that's caught my eye, and I'm really looking forward to digging into it with you.
Well, it's a fascinating story for sure. I mean, you've got a tradition of immense wealth and global impact all wrapped up in one.
Exactly.
And we're going to explore who the Aga Khan is, the legacy he inherits, and what this new role means for millions of Ismaili Muslims all over the world.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. Who is Prince Rahim al-Hussaini? What kind of guy are we dealing with here?
Well, he's the eldest son of Aga Khan IV.
Okay.
And his first wife, Princess Salima,
Right.
formerly known as Sarah Croker-Poole, a British ex-model.
A British ex-model.
Yeah, you can already see this blend of Eastern and Western influences right from the start.
It's not your typical background for a religious leader, is it?
No, not really. And it continues with his education.
Oh, how so?
Well, he went to Brown University in the U.S.
Wow.
Studied comparative literature.
Yeah, so we've got this mix of Western academic thought with this deep Eastern spiritual lineage.
Exactly, a unique combination.
It makes you wonder how those two worlds shaped his worldview.
Definitely something to think about as we get deeper into his role.
For sure.
He was also married to an American fashion model, Kendra Spears.
Right.
She converted to Islam and was known as Princess Sawal Aga Khan until their divorce in 2022.
Okay.
They have 2 sons together.
So even though he's kept a fairly private life,
yeah,
he's definitely got experience navigating different cultural contexts.
absolutely.
The articles also mentioned his work with the Aga Khan Development Network,
Right.
especially his interest in environmental and climate stuff.
Uh-huh.
Now, this is where I get really interested. Can you tell us more about the AKDN and how Prince Rahim might influence their work?
The AKDN, it's a massive network of agencies
Wow.
that work in over 30 countries.
Seriously?
And they've got an annual budget of about $1 billion.
$1 billion. That's
Yeah.
insane.
It is. It's a huge amount of resources going towards improving lives.
So they're involved in education, healthcare, and rural development, right?
You got it. They're tackling some of the biggest challenges facing the developing world.
With so many projects, how do they even decide where to focus?
Well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
They've got different agencies focusing on specific areas,
I see.
but they're all working under the shared vision of improving quality of life.
Okay.
And they've got a really rigorous system for making sure their projects are actually making a difference.
Makes sense. Got to track that progress.
Absolutely.
So before we dive into the AKDN's work, let's go back to Prince Rahim's new role. What does it even mean to be the Aga Khan?
Right.
What kind of responsibilities come with that title?
Well, the Aga Khan is the 49th hereditary Imam and spiritual leader of the Ismaili Muslims.
Okay.
And Ismailis believe he's a direct descendant of the Prophet Muhammad.
Wow. So he's carrying a pretty heavy spiritual legacy,
Oh, absolutely.
leading a community with such a long history. It's got to come with its own unique challenges and opportunities, right?
Right. You've got a balanced tradition with a rapidly changing world.
Right.
The Ismaili community is global.
Yeah.
They face different political and social and economic realities.
So how does he manage all that?
It's a tough job. He needs to address those needs while still upholding the core values of the Ismaili faith.
Oh, it's quite a balancing act for sure.
It is.
And it's not just spiritual leadership, is it? There's the financial aspect as well.
Oh, absolutely.
What's the Aga Khan's financial situation like?
Well, the Aga Khan's portfolio is estimated to be worth somewhere between $1 billion and $13 billion.
$13 billion.
It's a huge range, but it's definitely a global empire.
Wow, that's mind-blowing.
It is. It includes airlines, real estate, media companies.
So with that kind of wealth, how does that impact his role?
Well, it gives him the power to fund the AKDN's development work.
Right.
And he can support initiatives that improve people's lives.
Both within the Ismaili community and beyond.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He has a unique platform to address global challenges.
It's incredible to think about the impact that kind of money can have.
It is.
Now, you said he's the 49th hereditary Imam.
Yes.
Can you break down what Imam means in the context of Ismaili Islam?
Okay, so in Ismaili Islam, the Imam is the spiritual leader and guide.
Okay.
He's responsible for interpreting the faith
Right.
and providing guidance to the community.
And the hereditary part emphasizes that direct lineage from the Prophet Muhammad.
Exactly. It's a really important concept for Ismailis.
So it's more than just a title. It's about continuing a tradition that goes back centuries.
Exactly.
Right.
The Aga Khan inherits a legacy that shapes the lives of millions.
That's a lot of responsibility.
It is. And to understand that legacy, we need to look back at his father, Aga Khan IV.
Right. He led the community for a whopping 68 years.
He did.
What kind of impact did he have?
Well, his leadership was transformative.
How so?
He became Aga Khan in 1957,
Okay.
when the world was changing rapidly. And he guided the Ismailis through some pretty significant upheavals.
That's a long time to lead.
It is. It marks the end of an era.
Absolutely. And his passing must have been a big deal for the community.
It was a huge loss. They'd known him as their leader for almost their entire lives.
Wow.
Now, before we go into the specifics of Aga Khan V's impact,
Okay.
let's talk a little about the Ismailis themselves.
Okay.
Understanding their faith and history will give us a better context for both Aga Khans.
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Okay.
All right, let's jump in.
Great. So the Ismaili faith, it actually goes all the way back to the 8th century.
The 8th century. Wow, that's going back a bit.
Yeah, it's a long history.
It is. It must have been quite a journey for them to get to where they are today.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Can you give us a little background on how it all unfolded?
Well, the Ismaili faith emerged as one of several branches of Islam.
Okay.
And it all stemmed from disagreements about the succession of imams after the Prophet Muhammad.
Right, so who would lead after Muhammad?
Exactly. These different interpretations.
Yeah, led to distinct theological and legal traditions within Ismaili Islam.
So these early disagreements about leadership really shaped how the community developed.
Oh, they were fundamental.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just theological debates. These disagreements had real-world consequences.
Like what?
Well, the Ismailis gained a lot of power
Okay.
when they established the Fatimid Caliphate.
The Fatimid Caliphate.
Yeah. It ruled over vast territories in North Africa.
Wow.
From the 10th to the 12th centuries.
So for a while, these Ismaili imams weren't just spiritual leaders.
Nope.
They were political rulers, too.
That's right. But the Fatimid Caliphate eventually declined.
Right.
And the Nizari Ismaili Imams,
Okay.
that's the branch the Aga Khan belongs to.
Yeah.
They were mostly based in Persia.
Persia.
And
Yeah.
their followers.
Yeah.
Well, they were scattered across Central and South Asia and the Middle East.
So not concentrated in one place.
No, and often facing persecution, living as religious minorities.
That must have been a tough time for the community.
Oh, it was. To go from having so much power to being a dispersed minority group.
Yeah, it's a big shift.
It is. But they managed to preserve their faith and traditions.
Wow.
They adapted to different cultures and contexts, but they also held on to their distinct identity.
So adaptability is a key part of their story.
It's a defining characteristic, and it's something that continues to this day.
It's amazing how they've managed to navigate all that.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned the Ismailis are spread out globally.
Uh-huh.
Where are they mainly concentrated today?
Well, today you'll find Ismaili communities in about 35 countries.
35 countries.
Including places like Syria, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Tajikistan.
That's a pretty diverse spread.
It is.
Especially with all the political stuff going on in some of those regions.
Yeah, it's complicated.
It is. How do they manage to maintain their identity in such different settings?
They're known for their acceptance of other faiths.
Okay.
And they've really focused on building institutions that benefit everyone.
Not just Ismailis.
Exactly. Things like hospitals, schools, and the Aga Khan University in Pakistan.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
It's a really renowned center for research and education.
It sounds like a perfect example of their commitment to development.
It is. It's a vision of a just and pluralistic society.
Right.
Their faith emphasizes education, hard work, ethical conduct.
So despite all the challenges they faced,
Yeah.
the Ismailis have carved out a path focused on education, community building, and making society better. It's pretty inspiring.
It is. And it brings us back to Prince Rahim and how he embodies this blend of tradition and modernity.
Yeah.
His education at Phillips Academy and Brown University.
Yeah, where he studied comparative literature.
Right. It's not your typical path for an Islamic spiritual leader.
No, it's not. It makes you think he's got a more global perspective.
Yeah, maybe even a willingness to bridge those different worlds.
I wonder how that'll play out in his leadership.
Well, it'll be interesting to see.
For sure.
And it's not entirely new in Ismaili history.
Really? And how to...
Aga Khan IV actually broke with tradition.
In what way?
When he chose his successor back in 1957.
Oh, interesting.
His grandfather, Aga Khan III, chose him over other descendants.
Why was that?
He wanted a younger leader, someone with a fresh perspective to guide the community in a changing world.
So Prince Rahim's appointment is both continuing a legacy and returning to tradition.
Exactly. It's this interplay between tradition and change that makes it so fascinating.
It really does. He's stepping into a role shaped by centuries of history.
Yeah.
But the world's so different now.
Oh, it is completely different.
How will he balance tradition with the need for innovation?
That's the question.
It is.
Yeah.
And how will his global outlook and diverse background shape his leadership?
Those are the key questions we'll be exploring.
Right.
But before we go into that,
Yeah.
we need to understand the Aga Khan Development Network better.
I agree. We've talked about their budget, their projects.
Right, yep.
But I'm ready to dive into the details. How do they actually make a difference in so many places?
All right, let's get into the specifics.
All right, so let's dive into the heart of this Aga Khan Development Network.
The AKDN.
Yeah, the AKDN.
Right.
It's this massive organization with a billion-dollar budget working in over 30 countries.
Yeah.
I'm really curious to understand how they actually function on such a grand scale.
It's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
The AKDN was established way back in 1967 by Aga Khan IV.
Okay.
And it's evolved into this complex network of agencies all striving to improve the quality of life,
Right.
particularly in developing countries.
So their mission extends beyond just the Ismaili community then?
Absolutely. While the Ismailis are significant contributors,
Yeah.
their work benefits people of all faiths and backgrounds.
Oh, so their reach is much broader than I initially thought. We've touched on some examples like restoring Humayun's tomb and that Sunder Nursery in Delhi,
Right.
but those are just a couple projects. What else does the AKDN actually do?
Well, their scope is vast.
Yeah.
One major focus is healthcare. The Aga Khan Health Services runs hospitals, clinics,
Wow.
provides medical training, and tackles public health issues.
Healthcare is so fundamental. It's really interesting how they're not just focused on treatment.
Right.
Can you give us some examples of their preventative work?
They place a strong emphasis on preventative care and health education.
Okay,
Empowering communities to manage their own well-being is a key part of their strategy.
that makes a lot of sense. Creating lasting solutions instead of temporary fixes.
Mhm.
What about their work in education?
Education is another cornerstone of their work. The Aga Khan schools operate at all levels,
Okay.
from primary to secondary to higher education.
So they're offering quality education in areas that might not otherwise have access.
Exactly. They're filling a critical gap.
And they have those two universities, right?
You got it.
Huh.
The Aga Khan University and the University of Central Asia.
Impressive. They're not just focused on academics either, are they?
No, they're also hubs for research and innovation tackling challenges specific to those regions.
So they're kind of cultivating knowledge and empowering future generations.
Exactly. It's a long-term vision.
But education alone isn't enough, though, right?
You're right.
People need economic opportunities, too.
That's where the Aga Khan Agency for Microfinance comes in.
Okay, what do?
They provide loans and financial services to small businesses and entrepreneurs.
So they're giving people the means to build their own livelihoods.
Exactly. And they focus on marginalized communities, particularly women,
Right.
helping them escape poverty and become financially independent.
I love that they're empowering women specifically. What about their work in infrastructure and development?
Yeah, they do a lot in those areas too. The Aga Khan Agency for Habitat works on improving housing
Look,
and building resilient communities.
what does that mean exactly?
Well, they operate in both rural and urban areas, tackling things like disaster preparedness and climate change adaptation.
Wow, so they're really addressing development challenges from every angle.
That's the key to their effectiveness. They understand that all these issues are connected, and they take a holistic approach.
It's incredibly impressive. But with all the good they're doing, I imagine they face some serious obstacles too.
Oh, absolutely. Working in so many countries comes with its own set of challenges.
Yeah, like what?
You've got political complexities, cultural differences, securing funding.
Those are some major hurdles.
They are. It's a constant balancing act. And they're working in some of the most volatile regions in the world.
Wow.
You've got conflicts, poverty, natural disasters. It can all disrupt projects and make long-term goals really difficult.
It just highlights how complicated development work really is.
It's true.
It's not just about financial aid. It's about understanding the local context and working hand in hand with communities.
That's the AKDN's approach. They emphasize partnership and collaboration.
Right.
They don't believe in imposing solutions from the outside.
It's a much more sustainable approach in the long run. This brings us back to Prince Rahim.
Yes.
What do you think his priorities will be for the AKDN?
It's early days, of course.
Yeah.
But we can look at his past involvement for some clues.
Okay.
His strong interest in environmental and climate initiatives might suggest a renewed focus in those areas.
That wouldn't be surprising given the urgency of climate change. And his background in comparative literature and his global outlook could come into play too.
Absolutely. He might bring a fresh perspective to the AKDN, maybe
Yeah.
emphasizing the intersection of culture development and sustainability.
Those are some interesting possibilities.
Yeah.
He has the potential to make a real difference.
He does.
Not just for the Ismaili community, but for the whole world.
That's what makes this so fascinating. You've got faith tradition and global influence all converging in one person.
Wow.
It's a story of legacy responsibility and the potential for positive change on a massive scale.
It's a story that's just beginning to unfold. I feel like we've learned so much about Prince Rahim, about the Aga Khan's role, and about the incredible work of the AKDN.
Me too.
But this deep dive has definitely left me with more questions than answers. What direction will Prince Rahim's leadership take? What kind of impact will he have on the world? I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
That's the exciting part. The future's wide open and possibilities are endless.
It really is fascinating. What are your thoughts? What stood out to you most about the new Aga Khan and the legacy he's carrying?